Hello, hello. Oh boy. Well, here we are. Like an hour late because let's just watch this this 20th anniversary documentary of Half-Life 2 that I have not, well, that's a weird way of saying that. I didn't want to get spoiled by a documentary. So, we're gonna watch that. That's really all there is to it. I don't know what else to do because my headset isn't working. Now, turning off my computer like 10 times, my headset the same amount of times, unplugging everything, turning on. I've tried everything. That's why we're so late. So, oh boy, I'm just exhausted. I just want to sit down and like watch. I mean, you don't really need that much context, but like Half-Life 2, 20 years old, documentary came out talking about like, you know, the history. Episode 3, get a little bit into that. The beta for it. I think they even talk about like the hacking because there was a huge leak. Exhaustive. It's like everything you can know about Half-Life 2 in it. So we're just gonna get right into that. And just so you know, I don't really have a gaming pose or something, so I guess let's get right into it. Here we go. Now let's sit in the gaming pose. We be gaming. Anyway, I don't know if there are gonna be like any ads the way I have it set up in OBS. I haven't, like, I literally am so unprepared to do any like sort of reacting kind of thing. So I hope it's not too scuffed. Sorry if it is. Anyway, that's really all I have to say. Just be prepared for anything. All right, I gotta hold up. Here we go.
I always had been doing since my childhood a bit of urban exploration, so I love to like break through a window of an abandoned factory or building or train station.
Let's turn up that quality.
So that's one of my hobbies, used to be.
There we go.
What's on the roofs of buildings, you know, what's in an abandoned building cellar and in a factory. We did a lot of work on this.
Yeah, it's like a real train station out in like Eastern Europe. Like they couldn't take a lot of pictures.
I did my first photo shoot of the Austerlitz station. It was under construction, but then there was no security guards, no fences. Even you can just walk and see the broken textures and layers of paint and brick and history. And it was just so cool that I can get this information before it got overbuilt with a new neighborhood. Mm-hmm. I went to check it out last night. And it happens to be completely destroyed and under construction again. And it just goes back, luckily, coincidentally, to the exact same state where I shot it 25 years ago, actually.
I love it, because it's like, it's based off of the real world. Like, it's not completely a realistic visual, because it's like, you know, completely apocalyptic, but like, it's based off of places that look like that, which is awesome. in a kind of sad way. So I hope the video isn't too loud. This is much better quality than I had seen it in. It still does look so great after so long. And they got so many people back for this as well, which is crazy.
So one of the big challenges with Half-Life was just establishing the company and sort of determining whether or not we could actually make video games at all. Like, my background was operating systems and spreadsheets. Mike Harrington, who was the co-founder, had a similar background. He had a little more game experience than I did. But with Half-Life, you know, we were pretty sure we were going to fail. And then Half-Life was successful. It was like a lot more successful than we had any reason to expect. And now we had to follow it up, right? We didn't want to have a sophomore slump. We didn't want to be a, you know, a one and done kind of company. So now we had the terrifying obligation to our customers and to our fans to somehow advance our game design skills, our technology, all needed to level up for the second game.
It was just crazy.
I think a bunch of us were really
felt like
shocked
they
by
could,
the
and they
success
did
of
it.
Half-Life 1. We were this young, unproven company. I don't think any of us really knew what to expect when we finished the game. I remember when we started working on Half-Life 2, we had already set the bar pretty high for ourselves.
So during Half-Life 2, what we were really trying to do is take advantage of the visibility that Half-Life had created for us in the industry to continue to hire the best people that we could find in the world. It just got easier. The bar didn't get any lower, but the fact that we had, you know, it went from, hey, this weird dude who worked on operating systems wants to convince you can run a game company, to, oh, Half-Life won a bunch of awards, and now they're working on a sequel to that.
It was either my first week or my first day was actually the going away party for Mike Harrington, the co-founder.
Yeah, I came to Valve when it was just tiny. We had, I think, or maybe 10 or so people. Dave and I grew up together in Louisiana, so he and I had always talked about maybe starting a game company at some point. And during Half-Life, that kind of changed to a, maybe instead of that, the dream could be you come and work here at this one, you know, with me.
Yeah, you know, and I interviewed the day that Half-Life went gold, and I took the team photo.
There's like an old photo of us. We broke a paper mache head crab and everything.
Yeah, I was freaking out.
Yeah.
I was actually
so small in comparison to how things are today.
A video game
it's crazy.
Concept in high school, and I was seeking a mentor, and I got in touch with Mark Laidlaw at Valve. I guess it was the right time and right place, and quite a bit of luck, and I ended up getting an internship that way. I guess I was 17 at the time.
So you've got a whole company that's familiar with tools and a whole process, and then we just started over. Like, we rebuilt the tools and we rebuilt the engine. So we had this long period of time where we could sort of take our time on design. And so we spent a lot of time working on story and just trying to figure out how to make this thing bigger, like somehow more epic. And
you make it so
those
big,
discussions eventually led to
do so well the first time.
This
it
idea
gives you a little
that
bit more breathing room,
so in Half-Life 1, you open this portal, some strange rift to another
easy to
dimension.
squander
we
it.
thought, well, what if that broadcasts the signal to the universe that's like, oh, there's this planet there, it's free air and water. And so then we sort of came up with this idea of, well, there's this mega organization that's resource starved, and they're just gonna come and take it if they can.
How many years passed between? 6?
Yeah.
So I would say the first 2 years We tried a lot of things, and a lot of those story arcs that we had initially didn't have really any carryover from Black Mesa or any of that.
There was originally going to be three different alien races, like the bugs or religious ones, and the antlions actually came out of that bug race that was supposed to be a much bigger part of the game.
It had 3 alien races, the warrior aliens, the insect aliens, and the spy aliens. And it had like a Prague-like city, which ended up being the closest thing to City 17.
In a lot of ways, it reminds me of writing music. You know, everyone was sort of riffing ideas on, well, what if we did this or tried that? I remember we were really ambitious at the beginning.
Crazy.
I remember we designed, what, 4 cities?
4 cities, that would have been
At
insane.
one point, Prague, Jerusalem, Chicago, Los Angeles, I believe.
How would
We
you even
had
get between
an
all
Arctic
those?
base, an underwater base,
Wasn't
an
teleporting.
icebreaker ship, an airplane sequence that crashed into a high-rise, which we cut right after 9/11. We had several combine bases in the wasteland. We had the air exchange, which is where they were taking, you know, the atmosphere from Earth. We had a train depot and so on. So we
Borealis.
really obviously had to scale back
Okay.
what we were trying to do. But, you know, that's okay to go a little bit nuts at the beginning.
I saw it almost as like sophomore anxiety, maybe. You know, like, oh wow, we have to surpass Half-Life, and Half-Life was important, you know, and so it was like this like unbounded ambition.
And we kept asking ourselves, and Gabe kept asking, well, how is this Half-Life? Where, you know, when you have a silent first-person narrator, you could tell people this is Gordon and throw that character into literally any environment and say, yeah, this is Half-Life. But unless the environment is telling you that that's the case, you're not, it's very arbitrary. So we wrestled with that a long time. Slowly, the sort of grab bag of characters we had, we started to feel like there was connections between them. And then at some point we realized, oh, we could make this out of the science team, the survivors from Black Mesa. And suddenly, that for me was the idea of it's a science team. That suddenly, you could put those guys anywhere, and because they have like a familial interconnectedness and they recognize Gordon, that will make you feel like it's a continuation of the story. Like obviously Alex was totally new to that universe, but she had a father who had been at Black Mesa, and he and the other scientists were friends, and they had extended their relationship into this new world that you were in. That was kind of the click, was the science team, and that was a while till we got there.
You know, much like the first one where all the contributors were really collectively deciding on the direction, is we were really making a push to grow the team and hire new artists. You know, Zabi Ng was an influential early contributor. I think, you know, he and I were doing character designs for Gordon and for Alex and for some of the antagonist Combine characters.
At the time, I was looking at a lot of, I mean, really the helmets, which I think are kind of one of their defining features, was based off some gas masks from Europe that I had seen in some reference. I remember doing early concepts of the new HEV suit, like what's Gordon gonna be now? And I had kind of just started, and so I was like, I'm gonna make this my own. It looked, I guess, kind of like the still suits in Dune, but black and a lot more belt buckles and latex. And Gabe was just kind of like, what's this? Like, it's Gordon. I was like really proud and excited. It's like, why is it not orange? You know, it's like, or something to that effect of essentially like, why are you giving up this iconic part of the character?
People love it.
Yeah, people love that. So what are you doing? And it's like, you know, I was like, yeah, I guess he's right. So we kind of went back to the drawing board and ended up with what shipped.
We really had a goal the first try.
I don't know, so many creatures that we tried and abandoned, you know, not because they were bad, because we had better things to pursue, you know, more like there were the sack ticks, the cremator, the crab synth, the stalkers
like
as
the stalkers
an enemy.
We had a little bit in the game.
Yeah,
right?
we shipped the stalkers, but not as an adversary that you fought.
Yeah, there was definitely an evolution of how biological versus how synthetic a lot of the creatures in Half-Life 2 were. And I was always hoping to get to a space where it was ambiguous. where you couldn't quite tell if this was created or if it had grown or if it was natural or synthetic.
There was some synths I did that never shipped. Actually,
I would have liked to see a little bit more of that, like, creepy.
I had designed these synths that no
sort of thing,
animator could figure out how to
they went with
actually
like more
move
alien
'cause
and
they
more
weren't
human.
built to move.
And much like some of the environments that we've seen, released in the leak that were very dark, some of the early Half-Life stuff was also very dark. But at the time, video games were very dark.
In the interim, before we hired Fletcher, and
maybe
before
not for
Victor was
Half-Life.
there, because it was the old environments, right? I don't remember how it came about that they built this level, but the idea was there was some looting going on. And the idea was you're in this little alley and you see a citizen, you hear a voice saying, TV! Free TV! Like they just got into the TV store and there's the citizens and the cops are fighting and you see a citizen run past you holding a TV set and he goes, get one, get a TV, get yourself a TV. And then he runs off down the thing and you go in another courtyard and there's a cop with a nightstick and a citizen and they're like having a fist fight. And it's interesting because the NPCs are negotiating their bounding boxes and there's some animation like how difficult it is to contact.
Oh, man, that would have been so neat.
Captured everything. We took pictures of whiteboard design sessions.
Granted, not better than what
really
we got,
crude
but like
and ideas.
I would have liked
Some
to
of the
see
stuff
like a
from the
Half-Life
very beginning made it all the way
1.5.
to the end.
That would have been cool.
Ravenholm, antlions, dog, Kleiner's pet head crab, and those things were just so fun in the moment that how could they not survive, right? The other thing that was really memorable is I remember we started making the world really dystopian, really dark at the beginning, and some of the concept art shows that. We didn't think players would enjoy spending 20 to 40 hours in such a dark and a kind of oppressive setting, so the game lightened up considerably over time, but still maintained the feeling of a security state.
Yeah,
So
like I feel like they hit a
trying
pretty good
to,
balance between
get all these cool
like,
ideas that the team had already when I arrived,
hopeless and hopeful
streamline
at the
them.
same time.
You know,
like oppression,
instantly, I
but
think
also
we were
there is still
friends
like
with Mark Laidlaw.
openness
we had a
for there to
common
be something
sort
better.
of vision and
It's just really
fantasy
suppressed.
to create a Orwell.
Oh yeah, you can
city.
link me the
And
thing you were
then
talking about
slowly,
with the music.
you know, I brought context behind that. The idea that we can place this in an anonymous Central Eastern European city, which is a perfect setting because, you know, in these countries there were so many waves of invasions. You know, we had the Ottoman Empire, we had the Russians, and now why not the aliens?
And one of the first maps I remember working on was called Test Room Standards. On Half-Life, every level designer kind of had their own idea of how big stairs were or how big steps were going to be or how big a button was. Make sure we had some consistency. Another thing that was sort of important was just getting more people to go on field trips and going to do research. Because I think a lot of the level designers on Half-Life 1, you know, just were building very abstractly. And so we wanted to have some more grounding in reality and have more realistic proportions. And also just get textures were going from hand painted to more photographic. And so we would go out and collect a lot of the pictures for those textures to start building for our new library.
I joined Half-Life 2 probably a year after it had started. I know that it was at least a year because I was put on Borealis, which was like everybody else had disowned. But then I came along and said, oh, well, I guess this is now your problem. So I started on Borealis, and of course I failed at that too. That eventually got cut.
Yeah, so I came in having had experience doing game AI. I was at Looking Glass Studios. Probably the biggest thing I did there was lead programmer on Thief, the Dark Project. I did the AI for that too. And actually my first thing is they handed Borealis to me to do
after I'd finished?
To do the AI for the guy that you're supposed to walk through the Borealis ship with.
There was a bunch of work put into it. We even went on an icebreaker ship to get reference. As soon as we started to put it together, we realized how unbelievably tight the space was, and you could never make any kind of really interesting combat in it, and so it just withered on the vine right there.
I mean, when I started, there was that document that was the tech wish list. It was just this very bare bones bullet list of tech features. And I mean, I think it was like 6 years of work to build that tech list and then realize it into a product and leverage all the implications of it, you know?
So this was a main feature that the light felt very, very realistic and intuitive because of the Source engine and the work, the collaboration between artists and engineers.
Between Gold Source and Source.
And he was a fan about photography and getting the lighting right.
The math that we were using was wrong. And not only that, the math that everybody was using was wrong. And then as I started to correct it, and I realized just how bad it was, and then I fixed it, and suddenly everything looked great, I had to go tell the hardware guys, the people who made hardware accelerators, that fundamentally the math was wrong.
This looks so weird. Looks like Half-Life 1.
That took about 2.5 years. I could not convince the guys. Finally, we hired Gary McTaggart and Charlie Brown, and those guys had enough pull and enough. I have a fine arts major. Nobody's going to listen to me.
Charlie and I met at college at the University of Florida. We were both getting computer science degrees. Yes. I ended up dropping out to go work at 3DFX as employee 11 there. And then I think, Charlie, you actually graduated, didn't you?
I graduated and then followed you, and I was 17 there.
Yeah.
Charlie Brown.
There were three kind of principles. One was to make something that was immersive, visually really rich and appealing, something more like you would see in a film, and the art direction and the technology to make
like
that happen.
Half-Life 1,
Second one
Half-Life
was to have
2
characters that you cared about. So basically that could react, emote, that mattered in the world instead of just being signposts. Third was to have a responsive environment with physics that mattered.
I think that I, maybe more than other people, realized just how big of a task we were setting for ourselves. So I was a little bit daunted by that.
We felt the pressure from Gabe actually to double down and make something even grander than Half-Life 1. Therein lies the sort of a little bit of the trap of Half-Life 2's development story, which went from being a pretty quick, like, let's figure out how to do this, to like a 6-year, slog.
Yeah, and it was like, 6-7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day.
Yeah, we're going to cut your feature. Sorry, it's just not worth it.
So I ended up being really the point person working with the FBI.
I remember coming in that morning and figuring it out, and it just felt like someone had just punched me in the gut.
What's this mean? Like, can we still keep working on the game? Like, is someone just going to release the whole game tomorrow?
I definitely was not shielded from that.
I remember one conversation with Gabe, which is like, he was like, so how fucked are we? Yeah, we're kind of screwed.
The company was pretty close to going bankrupt. I was pretty close to going personally bankrupt. It's like there was no money left.
I can't think of another case when that happened. Yeah, a real bullshit move.
Are we allowed to cry in this documentary? That's what I want to know.
There's a lot of stuff going down.
Remember, we shipped Half-Life 1, and the world loved it, and we're just super happy. Like, yeah, we did this thing, and we had a big meeting, and Gabe looks at me and goes like, so all the animations are terrible. How are you going to make Half-Life 2 better?
Yeah, like
in
nowadays.
Half-Life 1, we made what were at the time significant improvements, but still they were fairly robotic and mechanical. And so we had to go and do a huge amount of work on the animation system and on the facial animation system and coming up with authoring tools that allowed you to do
so much legwork to make it look realistic.
End of the line.
Crazy.
A lot of this was level design, like figuring out how to build atmosphere. We knew that we wanted to start you off seeing the Citadel right away, and we wanted to introduce you to the city with this great voice acting from Robert Culp.
We wanted to finally do real characters. We knew that from Half-Life 1, the way that players would respond to having any character talk to them was like way beyond the reaction that we expected. Like when we figured this out in playtesting, like if Barney would follow you around and shoot things, you just love this guy, and you love the scientist, and you love these characters. So we knew we wanted to just bring that like way up to the next, like levels beyond what we could imagine.
It really did so many things
before anyone else. If you could make a character who could act realistically, that would help the player make an emotional connection to the other characters in the game. And at the time we decided we were going to do that, not only did none of the technology work, but I would go talk to industry professionals and they would tell me not to bother because you couldn't do it. Luckily, found
they're always going to say that, though. Never believe anyone who tells you you can't do what you want to do.
Ekman. And he had just broken down how the face works and how humans make expressions. And he had this incredibly wonderful, formal, clinical description of what a face does and the sorts of things that normal people do with their face.
I tried this experiment with putting a grid on Scott Lynch's face and shooting him from the front and the side so that we could get points from this grid in 3 space for the geometry, and we got shots of his texture, and we found a good way to model a reasonable head, of his geometry, and then project the texture onto it, and then abstract it or stylize it enough so that it didn't look totally photographic, but it looked like a kind of a real person.
Occasionally,
it's like
when somebody hears the
nice
history,
trick.
It will, generate a light bulb.
Save a lot of work if you can pull it off without it being uncanny.
No one's asking you for beers or anything?
No, or buying me beers.
We added Ken's eye tech to that, which was amazing because he really modeled and he went deep into the research of how eyes work.
Eyeballs was about 9 months, just on eyeballs.
I can believe it.
But you have to do each step. You have to get the shape of the eye right. You have to get how the eyelid gets pushed by the cornea and the ball of the eye. So as your eyes move around, your lower
making
lid,
something look natural is so much harder than making something look mechanical.
It was wonderful.
Crazy.
The day I got it working, the characters went from looking like interesting dolls to Alex just looked at me. Oh my God, this is working.
They would ask for surprising things at times, like they wanted really fine control over looking at named objects in the 3D world, no matter what direction the actor is facing. So you had to figure out things about, maybe the upper body needs to turn and the head needs to turn and the eyes need to turn.
So we're in
they
the
couldn't do
elevator
mocap for any of it. They had to make all the animations from scratch, or else they couldn't be dynamic like that.
That's the scientist, and he was an accountant in the firm below ours in Kirkland.
Yeah, nothing kind of blows your mind when you've been working all day on this character in your game, and all of a sudden you get on the elevator and you're like, holy crap, it's him.
I once ran into him at the airport.
So we cast people that were real change vendors in front of supermarkets. We cast waiters in restaurants.
When I was in junior high school, I took karate classes, and that was my old karate instructor.
Randy Lundeen said, hey, there is a guy holding a sign for work at this exit on 520 every day who has this great face, and he took a picture of his face, and he stopped and asked if he could. And so it's like, oh, this is great. I think this guy's Eli. We brought him in and, paid him a couple $100, which is what we were paying people back then, and so that's where he came from.
Erdine Grcic was a Bosnian
we don't know who he was.
That I knew from school. He was like, we want the East European contingent and stuff too, so it was pretty interesting.
We wanted anybody to feel a part of the world when they're playing it as a player, and so, we found people from pretty much every skin color, different ages, male and female, equal numbers of males and females. Sadly for them, they all had to share the same voice actor.
Sadly for us, too.
We dropped a crate of rockets coming across the plaza. We hoped for one more fighter to help storm that barricade. We never dreamed it would be you.
Kleiner's Lab was the first prototype that we did of how characters could work together in a scene.
Yeah, it was like a proof of concept. Yeah. We kind of had to make
the perfect
that
scene
work,
for it, though.
and put everything we could into it at the time to test all the technology, and then know from there what can we do, what else can we do with this.
Turning it into a performance that would be engaging rather than just audio, radio play kind of thing. Yeah, that was the point where that scene was where it all started to come together, all our theories and hopes for what the experience might be.
And it all went completely smoothly out of the box. It was
amazing. I bet.
The most difficult technical aspects are really kind of boring. They're the character is running through AI and now they need to jump in and do hug another character. Now they need to pick up something from the desk, and that thing on the desk can move, and where the character is can move, and where the player is can move, and everything about this whole scene can move dynamically.
Yeah.
And to get to that stage where it just looks right is this huge technical challenge.
It's so weird when you're doing
challenge.
something
But once it's
first
done,
before
it's just-
anyone
it's
else,
just
because it's
amazing.
just, you have to figure it all out. But nowadays it's so commonplace because there's so many people that know how to do it.
Gordon?
I love innovation.
Gordon, snap out of it. You're staring at me again.
Warming up nicely.
Are you sure you don't want me to swap out the polarizer?
I remember when we got Fletcher on, and he would kind of teach us about how they did things at Disney, and they would bring in acting coaches for the animators. What does sarcasm look like? Certain expressions, and there's a timing to those expressions. And
when you have a scene with multiple characters, it's not always the person talking that's doing the acting, right? Everybody's acting. Even though you may be looking at Kleiner because he's the one talking, every character in that scene around you, behind you, they're all doing stuff because not everybody's going to be looking at the same place.
Yeah, I remember even just like when Alex teleports and then you see her show up on the screen, right?
Oh, that was
And she's
incredible.
Heads over, gives him a quick kiss, and like it tells you so much about the relationship without having to say, "Hi,
And
Dad,
the
I
thing
love
is,
you," and all this
they
extra
make it
like heavy,
so
heavy
flawless that you don't
stuff,
even notice how much
Jake was a
work it
random
takes.
demo reel that was sent in. That was incredible.
At least nowadays, like you have to really put
Jake
yourself
was
in the shoes of these
incredible.
people to understand how
Miss
much
that
work
guy.
it
One of a
is.
kind. Yeah, miss that guy.
At
Amazing.
least put yourself in the time
technical
period.
Animator.
Because this is 2004 when it came out. This is before anything else that
whatever
was doing
needed
it like
to be
that.
done, he would figure it out and just make it happen. With it.
It'll just get done correctly.
I think also
The only thing I can
the
really compare it
context
to
of
is
when all
Halo.
this was taking place, like the problems that he was helping solve were just
Those
things that
dudes
weren't
are so
being done.
red.
Even something as simple as passing someone an object between two characters sounds super simple, but actually really complex, especially back then. And so he really helped push like how do we even do this in collaboration with the programmers.
Zabi wanted to do a goo thing, so I worked on the shader for that. I did the stuff for rendering that and all the little monitors everywhere that showed other scenes. Did the refraction shaders and the supporting
That
code
too.
for
It was
that.
like,
The
is that
shaders
really
didn't
necessary?
really have conditionals or loops or anything like that, so
They didn't
we
have
would
to do
unroll
that.
it all and compile a bazillion shaders. It got to the point where it was so many shaders and it took so long to compile that we, I think Mike DeSalt
there's a
implemented
lot.
distributed building system. Everyone's machine in the company was running something that could sit there and compile shaders all the time or do lighting for the levels or whatever.
It's all like
Group
any
effort.
opportunity to kind of add to the visual storytelling, I think was.
Yeah, and I think we hid the first G-Man sighting there.
He was one, that's right, he was one of the monitor.
Yeah.
It would flip to him, yeah.
And then he'd just walk out of frame.
The moment where you see him makes you realize there must be a lot of moments where you didn't know he was watching you. He's not Big Brother. That doesn't make sense to me that he would be a Big Brother, because that's sort of industrial and bureaucratic. And this is much more intimate. He's always over your shoulder, watching, waiting for the moment to speak. That's where I think he lives.
He's so great.
My name is Mike Shapiro, and I am G-Man. I am also Barney. And, Barney's not, he's not that far from, G. Gordon, like he's not that far from where I live. He's so fallible and he's always tripping over himself, and he's just such a good guy, Not necessarily
Love
the
Barney.
most capable, but just really there for you.
Get that thing away from me. Here, my pet. Hop up.
I think early on I had a sense that G-Man knew a lot and was taking care.
I was interested in working on more game stuff. But two, it was the biggest, I guess, group of people utilizing the displacement tech, since it was more of a terrainy thing and outdoors. And we were trying to figure out how we wanted to use the displacements, meaning we knew we wanted the things to look more natural. There was a lot more geometry in those maps than our previous ones, given just displacements in
so
general.
like the land not moving, but like the land shape
trying
in
to figure out how
general.
to make things a little bit faster, easier, or where we could make things do what we wanted them to do, but not necessarily cost as much as they cost.
It's much faster than walking speed. So you just signed up for building a huge amount of game. People can just stop and get out anywhere. So now you have this trade-off of density versus
That's another thing.
distance.
Like, man, they just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna add a car.
Make those levels
just gonna have to make these maps
But
huge with a
from
bunch of
Half-Life
stuff in
1,
them.
We still had the philosophy of there should be something cool,
Or at least a lot of
around every
space.
corner. Not like a monster popping out of you, but different reasons to be engaged in the world.
That's another thing as well. I always love how there's always
coastline with
something.
little
They know
towns, and you
perfectly
knew
how
if
to
you went
do that, how to
exploring,
make
you'd
it
always
feel like
get
it's
some
worth
kind of reward
exploring.
for that. It might be a health pack,
But it's
an
not
ammo,
that
or
there's
it might
stuff
be a character
loaded
interaction.
everywhere.
So that would let the player set their own pace and feel like they get to explore the world, and they're always rewarded for that. But if they wanted to drive straight through, they could.
I worked on like the area where there's the roller mines first come in, and the you're going along a
Roller
curving
mines is
path,
so
and then
weird.
there's like they blow up all the rocks.
I thought I'd see them
drop
more.
stuff in front of your path to try and slow you down, and then you've got like a little house fight. There were cases early on where people would just try to drive past everything and be like, why would I stop at this if I've got a car? And so we really wanted them to like be fairly unavoidable, and so you'd have to get out and be able to take them off your car, and then you'd be in the space. So it's really fun just jumping in there with the Combine soldiers and crafting little
We really
fight
have to get back
scenarios.
to that.
What makes AI fights interesting is not that they're the smartest or
Making
the best or anything. Like, it's easy to make
gameplay
AI
fun
that can just
rather than
perfectly shoot the
realistic.
player and kill them. That's not what makes them smart. It's
Adding
putting on
things
a show
because
that
it
makes them
makes
feel
it a better
interesting.
game.
So like in that fight in particular, you go up inside of a building and you get to the second floor, and you're fighting guys in there, and they kind of pull you up there. There's guys up in there, and as you go up and fight them, that happens. But then more guys spawn outside. Like, there's a bunch of windows up in that top section, and there's a crate sort of near the window, and when you go over to get that crate, they start shooting through the window at you. And it's not that the AI actually knows that you're there and starts shooting at the window the moment they see you. There's actually, we have these things called bullseyes that you could place in spots, and they basically would act like a target that the AI wanted to shoot. A lot of that isn't actually the AI being, doing this carefully crafted thing. It's more of us thinking like, what makes this like a neat presentation for the player, and gives them that sense that they need to hunker down. Like later on in the same coastline, there's a sequence where you're fighting a gunship and you're in the lighthouse. And as you go up the lighthouse, it's like sort of predicting where you are and shooting through the windows right in front of you and giving you that same sort of show. And that's all like bullseyes and things. Almost every game you play, you're developing a sense of mastery, and that actual sense of progress and mastery is the fun. Piecing it all together is like very core to what makes it fun.
Hello, Dr. Freeman. The car's all ready for you.
Good stuff. I love that. Like fake smartness from the
We
AI.
did the player drivable crane
But it's so
first,
convincing. I didn't even think about
and
that.
And then we went back and used it again, at the start.
That's a perfect
as
tutorial.
yeah.
Like, it's perfect training. This is how that thing works.
Yeah.
Don't forget, because it's about to happen later. You have to do it.
We did actually get very close to the base of a crane. Obviously you want to be in the crane, you want to be driving it, all these things. But yeah, we did get up very close to this crane again. I think it was asking somebody who was just wanting to take some pictures for a video game. Could you just let us in, try to act as like nice and non-threatening as possible.
We need the buggy to get into a state where it was flipped, so you could have to learn to recover it and all that sort of stuff.
Like, oh, we're going to flip it over, and then you have to proceed, you have to use the gravity.
I love how
We're
they
just trying
forced
to
that to
wrap
happen.
that
It's
in
so
some
funny.
sort of narrative instead of just spitting some text that tells you, if this happens,
That was, the crane was a hard physics problem, because like one of the worst case scenarios for physics is really, high mass objects moving around, because they're going to apply an enormous amount of force to anything they touch. And we have a rigid body physics system. So in the real world, when giant heavy mass touches something, usually it crushes them. We can't really crush anything. So already we're in like a tricky place.
That's how you're supposed to
The good
do
news
it.
was we had a fixed
I don't
space it
think-
could operate in, right? We could
I thought
control
it was
how
like
far you
throwing
can extend
stuff
the thing.
at
And so
it,
as the
because
level
I don't
designers could
remember
look
how
at it and be
I
like,
was
these are
doing
the
that.
only
There's not-
things that the crane
it's
will
not
ever
like
really
that.
be able to interact with. And so we could be pretty careful around, right, what are the things that that this magnet's going to touch, and let's make sure that at least the physics works pretty well for that.
And another thing, just like restricting it to what you have there. If you want to add something cool but hard to develop, you just gotta restrict
so I
the
worked
limits.
On
put it in a
the
box,
bridge,
essentially.
As one of the really early things I worked on there, which was great. Sawyer had already built the bridge. It's actually based on Deception Pass. So Deception Pass is nearby here in Washington. Coincidentally, I actually proposed to my wife there. But anyway, it's this really nice bridge that, like, if you go there, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is the Half-Life 2 bridge. The fight against the gunship and everything wasn't really all put together. It was definitely had that, like, scary, fear of heights scenario of going under the bridge, but we hadn't fully fleshed it all out yet. One of the first things I did was like, what if this was a train bridge and you had to do this, play chicken against the train? And getting the timing quite right took a little bit of work, but hearing the train horn come in and the moment of realization that players would have of like, probably some people die, a lot of people probably die the first time there, but you have this like, do I go faster or do I turn around? Like, what do I do? I don't know, it was a fun moment to create. All credit to Sawyer on coming up with the going underneath the bridge scenario. People to this day still are like, that freaked them the hell out. Like a lot of people were just, it's sort of seared in their memory, which is just, it's what
I didn't think it was that bad, but I did get that feeling
trying
that they were trying to
like capture the sense of height and playing with the ambient sounds to get the, just to capture the sense of being precarious and high above the ground was just a fun little design challenge.
David came up with that, and we play tested it. And the first time we play tested, I think the person who was play testing, their knuckles were white. And it was really tense. And of course, then someone had the brilliant idea of like, oh, they finally made it. They felt great. Now we're going to make them go back. And the gunship, that came in. Yeah, so that was always fun. There's this thing we call edge friction.
I remember seeing the missiles the first time I went over that bridge, and I was like,
that just reduces your normal movement.
I wonder why there's a bunch of
amount.
missiles here.
But what we would do is whenever players would get close to edges, we would increase that friction a lot so that people wouldn't accidentally fall off things. It's just
good idea.
Fun for the player, right? So there was definitely
so
a bit
many
of
little things
friction
like
play
that.
involved there.
Make it, just don't make it obvious, but just make it slightly easier so that people don't have a bad time.
Hurry, get in the basement. We're expecting gunships at any moment.
He became iconic for reasons I don't totally understand except the performance. We were calling that town New Little Odessa or Little Old New Odessa. And then I got spam email from Odessa Cubbage or something like that. It was definitely a name that came out of an email spam. And I'm like, this name is amazing. So it went straight into the game. And then John Lowry came in and acted him with his fake British accent.
Damn. Let me just send a warning to Lighthouse Point, and then I'll come right up and lend a hand.
I will say that they said they only had
like training the rocket
one
launcher.
male voice actor, one female voice actor for the main people. So it's funny how he got his own voice actor.
To train, because training in combat's always a nightmare by itself, because people are under duress, trying not to die. They're focusing on some other thing that's threatening them. It's hard to observe what's going on rationally and draw lessons from it cleanly. So you always know it's going to be hard if you're trying to teach something you're trying to teach in combat. We watch a playtester, they step out and they fire a rocket at the gunship, and then they duck behind cover. And so the laser dot goes onto the fence in front of him. We all hear the rocket turn around and start coming back, and so you hear
basically, here we go, 5, 4,
it's louder,
3.
And then the player looks out again at the gunship, and the rocket goes, looks around back at the gunship, and we're like, oh! And then he ducks back again, and we're like, oh my God, we hear the rocket getting louder and louder, and he peeks out again and whips off again.
An integrated part that I think has really always been important, something that Gabe introduced in Half-Life 1 was the
Players
way that
are
we
always
playtest
going to find things
and then iterate
play
really
the worst ways that
rapidly
you
on
don't
the
expect.
playtest results. So you have dozens and dozens of people come through one section of the game.
Every time I hear playtesting,
and
that's
you
always
sit
how it
there
is. It's just
painfully,
like, wow.
silently taking notes while they struggle and get frustrated and
because you think
totally
something's obvious, but they don't,
because
they don't know.
And then you go and you fix that over and over and over again.
If your title is game designer and your design sucks, then it can be threatening, all right? Like maybe I'm bad at my job and I should get fired, right? And so a lot of the games industry never did any testing at all. With this playtesting process, that's what basically taught me design in a lot of ways. We would just we'd come up with an idea for the helicopter, and then we'd be like, okay, let's put it in front of somebody and watch it happen. And then we'd very quickly start realizing that our mental model of like how people are reacting to this stuff is wildly different than what we expected.
Yeah. Because you always you get so engrossed and you're like, oh yeah, I would do this. And then you see someone who's never seen it before try it, and it's like, whoa.
I had met Gabe when he was
It wasn't that
Valve,
obvious what you should do, isn't it?
But pretty much the first thing was, Gabe was like, so when you were at Sierra, we did this deal with you for Half-Life and Half-Life 2. You need to go fix that because we don't like the deal that we did. The intellectual property for Half-Life was owned by Vivendi. The Team Fortress IP was owned by Vivendi. So it was get back our IP, get a better royalty rate, and then have the ability to experiment with online distribution. We knew we were going to grow the team, and then part of the deal was also that we were going to take on all of the funding responsibility for Half-Life 2, TF2, all those things. There was cash flow from Half-Life. We were figuring out how to do things here and there, like expansion packs. A large part of it was Gabe tapping into his assets. He had done fairly well at Microsoft, not crazy well, but things started to get a little thin.
So I assume you guys have talked to Scott or Eric or somebody about sort of the context of the whole.
Yes, we talked to Scott, Eric, and Gabe about it.
Sierra, by that point, had become acquired by Vivendi, had worldwide distribution rights, but only for retail packaged product.
Vivendi was licensing Counter-Strike to cyber cafes. We went to Vivendi and said, hey, this is not a big deal. Just agree that this is outside of your license. And, we've spent a little bit on attorney's fees, just cover, some tens of thousands, just cover us for that. I think I've seen this. And we'll move on and just keep going. And they wouldn't do it. I think some people at Vivendi
we want to give it out illegally.
Did not like the new deal that they ended up signing. And I think there were some hurt feelings in some quarters about that deal. When we said, hey, the cyber cafe thing, you really can't do that. Coming on top of, a year negotiations and torturous negotiations, I think that just struck an angry chord. We ended up filing the lawsuit, but really just on.
But I didn't have a disk drive when I played it, so I played it on Steam.
Hey, court, will you go just read this language and say, are they outside the license or not? And Vivendi decided to go World War III.
You filed our case in Seattle, federal court in Seattle, and they hired a law firm to defend it, of course. There was some initial skirmishing about discovery. There were some disputes and motions that had to be decided by the judge, and those went all Valve's way. And then suddenly, the law firm disappeared. They hired a big scary law firm from San Francisco. They thought, okay, Valve's had some success in this case, and so we need to change their mindset from we think we're going to be successful to we're going to be destroyed. The next thing we knew, here comes this big stack of counterclaims, everything from canceling the 2001 agreement to obtaining ownership of all the Half-Life IP, to keeping us from doing Steam, to you name it, where they included Scott and Julie Lynch and Gabe and Lisa Newell, his wife at that time, personally, as defendants.
And so it was kind of like, well, we're going to put Valve out of business.
Just throwing everything because they're upset, even though they're doing the wrong thing.
What they felt like was their path towards winning this fight.
They decided that it would have more effect.
That's why I hate expensive lawyers.
If process servers showed up at everybody's house.
It should just be like
in the night and
more fair.
So
anybody should be able to win a case if they're right.
A real bullshit move.
It's not a legal strategy. It's basically trying to intimidate you. In other words, they're saying not only are we going to take all this money from the company, but we're going to take money from you personally as well.
I can't think of another case when that happened.
They were certainly a lot bigger than we were. Vivendi was a multinational conglomerate. As compared to us, their funding was infinite. It felt very David versus Goliath.
Publishers at that time in the industry were used to being able to bully developers, right? And so this was really about an assertion of power as much as it was optimizing for a financial outcome. The tactics that they were using were trying to just run us out of money, right? So they knew how much money we were making because they were doing retail distribution of our games. And so they were just trying to crank up our legal costs as just another way of draining resources from the company.
We were protected from that a lot internally, so we didn't have to think about it. They did a pretty good job of letting the team concentrate on what the team could do without worrying about the future of the company so much. I mean, that was my perspective.
So yeah, I definitely was not shielded from that. The lawsuit was something where it's like created all this uncertainty around whether the game's going to come out. Vivendi was definitely trying to use that as leverage. And so even if we finish the game, they're not going to let us release it.
There came a point where Gabe had pretty much used up his liquid assets. And he was like, you know, should I put the house on the market? And I was like, yeah, I think it's the time where you put the house on the market if we want to keep going.
Which is good for the company. I'm glad that they were able to
bankrupt. I was pretty close to going personally bankrupt. We went all in. It's like there was no money left. Like,
how anxious was that for you personally?
I don't know. There's certain things that I'm kind of a weird person in a number of dimensions. Like, I don't really think, oh, this is super scary. Like, I don't have an emotional response to it. I just say, well, this is what we're doing. This is how, and you know, we'll see how it plays out. So I don't think it was super stressful to me, right? I mean, it didn't really bother me. Like, I was diving in South Africa recently and a shark tried to bite me a couple of times. And the people around me were way more freaked out than I was. I was like, oh, a shark's trying to bite me. I should get away from the shark. Whereas other people were having like, oh, a shark, it's trying to bite somebody, you know. And I just think that's how I'm wired. I don't think it's anything that speaks to my character or anything. It's like, I just seem to not get particularly agitated around risk, which probably means I take on more risk than at times than most sane people would, which can be a positive, or you can wreck a bunch of other people's lives being in the neighborhood of your risk indifference.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest risks obviously can give the biggest successes. I mean, like this, none of this would have happened if anything were different. And so I don't know. He's crazy for that. But butterfly effect, man. He's wired that way, so he basically saved everything.
They're this
so many people would have pulled
structured,
out.
You know, organization. Of course, they're going to have this really terse language for everything they do. You know, there's sort of an announcer voice in that follows you around and kind of comments status, essentially, like how alert the world is to you. I sat down and just basically wrote a language for that so that the soldiers and the Metro cops would have jargon that they would use. Then I just used that to kind of encode. So that's where like anti-citizen one and things like that came from. Rather than saying the guy with the orange suit is causing trouble, you know, it would be, you know, anti-citizen one breach, scalpel something, sector something. So I basically just had this little dictionary. Then I overdid it on the vocal processing because they're all wearing these, you know, these masks, and I wanted it to sound like they're in a mask.
And it was very deliberate to never have to like shoot somebody that you can see their face. Like, we didn't want you killing humans. I mean, the Metro cops are humans, but we covered all the faces up. I think it was all part of this calculated and deliberate way of saying, like, look, games don't just have to be a certain way. There's so much room in what we can do here.
I like that a lot.
Well, the Metro Police and the Combine Soldiers share
makes it feel
a lot of AI. And so there's an internal communication among them. And one of the things we did, both for the sake of difficulty and exposition,
it's good for like
limit the number of squad members that could be firing at the player at any given
Obviously,
time.
it's not necessarily the most realistic to have every single enemy look exactly the same, but
grabs one of those slots
and
if it's
all
available
wear gas
and starts to shoot. And if someone else, another squad member, wants to attack the player but no slots are available, they have to find the next best thing to do, which is I'll get out of the
be a
scene
certain
for
way
a
so
second,
that
or I'll go
it's very.
reload, or I'll throw a grenade.
It's not
and
hand
that
over
was
fist,
all stuff that
but
we
it's
learned building Half-Life 1, and I think got a lot better at.
Very obvious who's the bad guy.
Half-Life 2 used a node
talk
graph
over like that
system.
entire
Hand-placed nodes by developers in the levels would describe a really super low fidelity version of the environment for the AI to use.
It enabled the level designers to sort of inject and puppeteer a little bit the AIs in ways that were just easier for them to sort of be in control as opposed to having to grab an animator or a programmer to be able to get really cool things into the game.
Floor is Lava is like a really obvious piece of gameplay. Physics is really fun to manipulate. We just thought like, hey, you could build your own path. We'd already seen players who enjoyed moving stuff around, like building bridges and stuff. And like, we don't have enough moments where like, I just pick up a plank and lay it across a gap and walk across it. Like obvious stuff. We've barely done that in the whole game.
And the fact that you're laying stuff down on the floor means that the finesse required to do like precise placement wasn't necessary, right? You're like, I just want to place it here. And it doesn't matter the orientation, you just kind of jump on it and you do the next one and so on, right?
And
also,
it doesn't feel contrived either to have a bunch of garbage all over the ground.
Everyone got it.
Laszlo,
the finest mind of his generation.
At least not in a way that makes it unfun.
Exactly how to do it.
Someone's coming. You there! Stop where you are! Stay on the rocks! Don't step on the sand, it makes the antlions crazy! Laszlo, don't move! No. Help! Dear God! Poor Laszlo! The finest mind of his generation! To come to such an end. We were heading for the Vortigaunt camp, hoping to pick up some bug baits of these damn things and leave us alone. But without Laszlo, what's the point?
That dialogue does feel a little contrived in
at the moment
hindsight,
they die,
but
and
it
let
works.
The fans fill in their whole life story and give them something to play with.
The Freeman will have need of these pheropods on the paths ahead. Gather them now.
Nova Prospect and the antlions with the pheromone balls were really fun because it lets you experience them in a different way. And it was another classic example of getting the most value out of technology investments that people could.
I remember the beach thing. The design intention was definitely to make it feel like a sort of D-Day beach landing. You didn't come from the water, but you're storming up towards these old gun emplacements. If I remember right,
that's such an interesting way to do it. I'd never seen that.
Invading the bunkers, and you're bringing your horde with you. You're overwhelming these in place defenses. It was surprising how much chaos you could get away with. Like I remember we did a lot of tuning to make sure the antlions spawned. We had difficulties from time to time with like design some choke point or challenge or whatever, and the antlion flow rate wasn't enough to make it feel
and really they did kind of have it down.
Like we had a
like all of the
physics
goal too.
It
The
wasn't just
antlion
about,
jumping and everything that was perfect.
To overcome this, you wanted to feel like
it's crazy
your forces
how many AI there were.
Stormed the walls. They're everywhere. There's chaos all around you, and so a lot of the tuning was about achieving that feeling, not just about mechanically getting past
I've ever had
the enemies that we'd set.
Nova Prospect was different than a lot
just
of the maps that I worked on. At least,
not even inside.
In that we had
outside.
some early art prototypes that were done. We have this whole concept of like zoo maps, we call them, which are basically like little art test scenes, how they would fit together, and some basic lighting.
But by the time our cabal got to Nova Prospect, we knew we were coming in with antlions and with bug bait. And so we already knew that a bunch of stuff was going to change because we had to support you and your army of antlions fighting combine soldiers. Antlions look great whenever they were being shot by anyone.
Yeah.
Like particle flecks flying off, and they always look great. And so setting them up against combine soldiers looked great. Setting them up against turrets looked great.
Those were super fun scenarios to work on though, because having these antlions that you could just use in any way you wanted was really fun. And coming from the coast, just the contrast of shrinking everything down and then just piling it full of stuff was a lot of fun.
Striders
the first time I saw one of those,
Striders
it was
crazy.
Ted Backman's concept. I just thought,
I can't believe that I get to use a creature this cool in level design. Like
That looks like
these guys are
a
really,
lot of the
really, really
beta
fun to use.
creatures. Like
I
that's the
remember
most
Kelly
Half-Life 2
Bailey
beta
had,
looking thing
created a
that
short
made it
list,
into the
things
final
like
game.
He wanted flocking flyers, and he wanted a.
There were so many
moving
other
guard
things that
tower,
kind of looked
which
like
was the first
Striders in the
description of
beta. It's kind of
Strider was a
crazy.
mobile guard tower. So I saw that and immediately understood that, kind of orchestrating the enemies in that way, trying to get the most variety and the most breadth of shape and movement and experience was the correct way to move forward.
The design for that first Strider map was something I came up with and I was really passionate about. It was all about like running across and just getting like one shot in your tush, right? Just as you made it through.
Even just hearing the sound, the thump, thump, thump of them walking, like, okay, there's like a boss nearby. You just see the legs walking by, but you can't see the body. Like, there are so many things you can do with these guys.
Honestly, there were still people on the team, I think, that were still thinking that we were going to bomb. That people are just going to not be impressed.
When did you know it was going to be good?
E3.
Yep.
E3.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing.
Yeah. Beta stuff. This is very Half-Life 1, despite it looking
it seems like
so
at some point there was an
Half-Life 2.
E3 demo that we got together that we didn't end up showing, but at least at that point it just felt like, oh wow, we actually have made something here.
We went through and made a bunch of demos for 2002, and everybody looked at them and was like, we're still not confident about this, and we don't think we've hit the bar, so we're not going to go at all. Like, they had totally planned to go. And then when 2003 rolled around, I just remember everyone was still terrified. We were like, okay, how are we going to craft everything we've had into like a number of messages about what this product is? And like, we came up with like the core theme of each one of these movies.
Oh, do be careful.
We didn't really understand at the time, I think, the embarrassment of riches that we had. We looked at it from two angles. One was a set of technical features, a sort of conceptual listing of things that we thought were important, like physics and things like that. And then the other side was content-based. What areas of the game were innovative, what areas of the story we thought were compelling, which characters we thought were worth people paying attention to. And so it was an interesting sort of marriage of which features and which content are the best showcase.
What the?
Sort of marriage.
Was that?
Of
is there?
which features and which content are the best showcase for all those things. A lot of what was in the demos was rendering.
Also, another thing, sorry.
The best showcase for all those things.
Threw down the
a lot of what was
shotgun
in
to
the
pick up
demos
the
was
rocket
rendering
launcher.
technology,
That would
but
be
I
an
think
interesting
the stuff
mechanic,
that
but I
felt
don't think
the
I would have liked
strongest
that.
to most of us at the time was really physics-based.
So if something looks like wood, then it sounds like wood, scrapes like wood, floats like it, and if you shoot it, it'll fragment like wood.
To people at that time, it was pretty mind-blowing just to watch be able to pick things up, knock other things over, use things in a way that felt true to a three-dimensional reality. Maybe it's on those videos, I don't remember, but people were gasping and hitting the people next to them because they couldn't really believe what they were seeing on the screen.
There's no limitation on the complexity of those interactions.
Physics good.
So
I like the look of that. Although I don't know if it's
consistent interactivity.
I like what we have
opens the
more
door to
now.
a wide variety of new gameplay mechanics.
This will run on my 486.
That person who was talking about a 486, obviously it's just about, you must have a supercomputer behind, how are you even doing this? What is going on? The lines outside the booth became enormous, and it was the thing that it really distorted the rest of E3 because so many people were anxious to come see our demo.
And I remember seeing this absolutely enormous line with some pretty well-known people in there, right? Miyamoto was in line for this stuff, and
Will Wright, I think.
Yeah, Will Wright. There was a bunch of, and so then after that was all done, people on the team were just like, okay, we are ready. We can ship this game. We know we've got something good. It was really easy at that point. It felt like we were rolling the ball downhill after
Until it
that.
leaked.
Until it leaked.
Oh boy. Oh yeah, and that jar is a head of one of those beta enemies they
When
showed
something
earlier.
like this happens, there's not like a big sign saying you've been hacked and somebody has access. Like you start off with something that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and you start pulling on that sweater thread.
Gabe's brother had a company called Tangis, and they made wearable computer stuff. So he was kind of winding it down, and he had 1 or 2 Unix servers that hosted the tangis.com domain name. Unfortunately, they were put inside the firewall and didn't have the latest Linux or whatever security updates on them. And so this kid from Germany was able to sort of exploit his way into that. He sat there for months, I think. He was able to sync the build, all the source code.
I was riffing ideas for, I think in particular, Counter-Strike. That information ended up on one of the internet chat rooms. And only 2 people knew the contents of that email. Of course, Gabe and myself. And I went to ITG and said, this could only have come from a leaked email. We got to figure out how that got out there.
But I remember at some point Gabe walking around, you know, like one of those moments like, turn your computer off, something just happened.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I remember the video on my desk and he coming like, turn your computer off, I think we're being hacked. And I was, what? Like, I didn't know what to do. I actually did not know what to do.
I remember coming in that morning and figuring it out, and it just felt like someone had just punched me in the gut.
You know, it's like the bit in movies where like after an explosion, they'll have a scene where someone's like staggering around the street and everyone's like,
yeah.
What's this mean? Like, can we still keep working on the game?
Yeah.
Like, is someone just going to release the whole game tomorrow?
Scary. And I don't know if the guy who hacked it intended to. I think,
Yeah, he showed it to
he
friends.
intended the wide distribution.
He showed it to friends, and then one of his friends posted it somewhere.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a double-edged sword because we get to see so many cool. Yeah, it's so many.
And one of the things I think that's pretty interesting is how much the leak of the game, the hack of our network and the leak of the game, how much that kind of shattered that confidence.
It was like, you know, having a movie that you're working on be spoiled for the world. That's how it felt. Because we knew it would be hard for people to know that that existed and not go look at it all. It looked all broken to us, and it just felt really demoralizing.
Oh man, I was seriously affected by that. I was pretty angry. So I don't know. It kind of affected me for a while. You know, having it called the beta when it was not even close to being a beta. Work in progress, you know. Wasn't really ready to be seen yet.
Normally the office is pretty vibrant and loud, and people
It's
are riding
cool to have
scooters in
so
the
many
hallway
things
and
that
doing
would have
all
been
sorts of
lost.
stuff. Gabe's tubing through
Not
and singing,
literally
and
lost, but like
it got
we would have
very
never
still
seen
and
them
very
as
quiet.
people.
I remember
But
that. That was very eerie. That was the game that was going to make
so
or
many
break
things
the
had to be
company. We
changed
didn't
because
know if we were going to have to
I
go
don't know.
find
You could say it's for the
jobs.
better because
Not only did it show everybody that we were not anywhere near where we said we would be, but all the work that we had in progress, all the plans that we were making were just laid out bare. And so a lot of us just thought, oh, we're toast. We've worked so hard. Are we going to go bankrupt? And then all that while Scott Lynch and Gabe were being sued by Sierra, their wives being delivered subpoenas. And so it was this super dark time.
So there were two interesting threads going on. One was, traditional law enforcement and intelligence agencies, and they were doing their thing and issuing subpoenas and seizing devices. And then we asked our community to help us out. And I think Axel Gembe started to realize that he was being tracked down by the community, right? Everything was being, essentially, it was an open source investigation. So you could see that they were getting closer. And that's when he reached out to me. Of course, I was insanely furious with him, but we ended up running this sort of scheme with him where I was like, oh, wow, you must be really good at security issues. We should have you come out and interview. And the FBI was going to arrest him when he got off the plane.
And then apparently the German police sweep in right as he's about to leave, because it turns out he's also guilty of a bunch of bank fraud and bank hacking and all that.
He had
kind of
hacked into a bunch of huge companies over there as well, and so they were already well aware of him.
How much it harmed us financially, or like how much the success of the game was harmed by that, very debatable. So it was hard for us to go through internally, but in the end, I wouldn't have wanted to have it be a whole like law enforcement debacle.
I'm glad they survived, but I totally understand that they
wouldn't have
may
really helped
not
anyone.
have.
And I'm not
if they
saying
weren't
we should
able
never
to
be
come
lax
back
about
from
security,
that.
but like if we could survive that, like maybe, we'll survive anything, because at the end of the day, the special sauce was everything that happened between the moment of that leak and when we actually shipped. And if you look at that version of the game.
When you grab it early,
so
like
not what the final game ended up being. And so even if our competition had all the source code and that executable, they're still not able to produce Half-Life 2 from it because the company kept moving forward, and the company was the interesting special sauce.
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome to hear. I'm so glad that they were able to recover from that because not everyone does.
Gabe in particular, he had kind of a pencil sketch of an idea in his head of what would become Steam, but it was clear that Team Fortress Classic and then later Counter-Strike, it was fundamentally the thing that we were really attracted to was our ability to ship content directly to our customers. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a set of business goals that ended up being part of Steam, but fundamentally it was a bunch of game development goals
Steam,
that it was servicing that were so attractive to us.
It was a very weird time. Like, I don't think people understand how many times we would go to people and say, no, you will be able to distribute software over the internet, and have people just say, no, it will never happen. I'm not talking about one or two people. I mean, like 99% of the companies we talked to said it will never happen. Your retail sales force will never let it happen. But also people would say users aren't going to want this, right? People want physical copy. Like, there were so many bad faith arguments that were being made. Retail sales
like physical copies,
is not
don't
the
get me
goal,
wrong.
Right? It's
but
actually
at the same time,
an impediment.
You shouldn't be forced into that.
It's somebody who sits between you and a customer.
And we ended up going out to finding this company called Applied Microsystems. So we ended up hiring most of the original Steam team from that other company to build initially this sort of in-game advertising streaming model, but then there was the epiphany that, hey, it's just bits. Why don't we just download whole games this way? You guys go off and do it.
You have security in it.
The decision
is
to not only use Steam to ship Half-Life 2, but actually to require Steam, even in the versions that were purchased at retail in a box, was the most interesting decision of all those, because it turned out to be an incredibly important decision for the future of the company. And a lot of us were nervous, and a lot of the people who had been at Valve for a long time, since the very beginning, were the most nervous about that decision. And so it was one of the rare exceptions to our decision-making process usually, and Gabe had to really step in and say, no, actually, we're doing it this way.
Yeah, he's very much a go-getter. I wouldn't expect anything else.
I remember coming to work in the morning, working on Half-Life 2, which meant that, by the time you go home at night, me being a 24-year-old idiot, all I wanted to do was keep working on the game. And, I started just making the game work on multiplayer, right? Mostly just working on prediction, like what would it feel like to have a gravity gun on a multiplayer setting, right? Getting physics objects to work. It was just curiosity. Scott Dalton saw me working on it, and he's like, I'll make a map, and then we play. Put the map up, we started playing in the office in between, builds of Half-Life 2, like playtest. And I remember Gabe walking by my desk, and I remember him going like, what's that? And I said, oh, it's Half-Life multiplayer.
It's so funny how he didn't even know.
Show it to me tomorrow. And he just walked away.
I think that is one of the advantages of the general cost we always pay to keep our code in a single code base. So when we're working on TF2 and Half-Life 2 at the same time, at that point, we're paying this continuous cost in Half-Life 2 for the fact that it's built upon an engine that's designed to do multiplayer. But it means that when you get to this later point where you start asking, well, can we build multiplayer deathmatch out of this? Like, the code's all sort of built upon fundamentally a client-server sort of foundation.
I do like that. I mean,
definitely the most entertaining thing that you could throw at somebody that happened to be scattered around the world was picking up a toilet and hurling it at someone's head, and then having that show up in the upper right corner of your screen with name, toilet name, was very satisfying.
I was also selfishly trying to get the game ported to multiplayer so then we can release the tools, the SDK, ready to go. Like, it meant like mod makers could just immediately start making multiplayer game mods.
Oh, that's so cool.
Rather than waiting for us to do it or someone else to pick it up.
Support the community. Always support the community.
We were so heads
you don't
down
support your community, you're
working
going to
on
die.
We didn't really get a chance to play the train station.
I remember that was one of the lessons that came away from Half-Life 1 is like,
We need to be building these games backwards, in a sense. The first thing we're going to put in front of people is the thing we built when we're as good as we can be at it. You know, we know our tools and things like that. And a lot of the anxiety.
I guess they do both start on a train, except
was behind us.
That makes it a bit more
really
obvious that
confident,
it's a Half-Life 1
We're building a
reference.
really good game.
Thankfully in Half-Life 2, it's just like you arrive on a train and not making you do the same whole thing again. I think they did it well.
We're entering the Gare d'Austerlitz. And this train station is very important because it's one of the main inspirations for the train station of City 17 where the player starts. The reason why I'm using a Parisian station produced by Eiffel, who did the Eiffel Tower, is that there's an identical station in Budapest.
Train station's the last bit we worked on, right? Yeah. And we always want to build the start of the game late, as late as we can, because we understand our game at that point.
That makes sense.
In general, the
what a
train
great
station was a
face
really
he's
interesting
got.
problem because it was basically one big choreo sequence intended to deliver atmosphere and story and background and sort of set your expectations for the world.
We let the level designers who were really good at this stuff figure out what was a good experience. And then we were kind of always there to provide dialogue, acting, stuff like this guy.
I think it was pretty clear, too, that we wanted to provide incentive to
The atmosphere in that first part is pretty great.
About how people were being mistreated.
It really tells you so much without saying it directly.
The situation was here and kind of start to trigger that righteous indignation early.
All this stuff is fun to look at, but you just assume it doesn't move and you can't interact with it, you can't pick it up. Because all the stuff we're going to do later with the gravity gun and everything, like, first we got to start just mundane stuff like that food, you know, that little empty bit of food.
I mean, it happens like the moment you leave the train, wind comes and blows all the trash away.
Doing it everywhere.
You can see the Vortigaunt sweeping. So like, guy pushing it on the cases, on the
and all those
cases.
things fall off.
Yeah,
and
so
you can pick those up. And,
we were like, if
I hadn't seen it so many times because of how old the game was before I had played it, it would have been so much more interesting to me. So you got to put it in perspective.
Something about the way he walks.
It's like a beer drinker.
Who would have thought Barney has the capacity to go undercover, right? Like that seemed to be, you know, above his pay grade, above his intelligence pay grade from the get-go.
Look at that beautiful animation. But where does hat go? It's gone. Something is not right here.
It's magical combine tech.
We were trying to figure out how to get people to figure out how to pick up things and do things. And we were all just sitting around because we've been having this problem for a week.
The tutorial without actually having a tutorial.
Robin had a Coke can on his desk. And at some point I got frustrated. I smacked it off his desk. I'm like, well, you pick that up then. And
I hate tutorials that like railroad you. Please, if you ever make a game,
I just found it just an immensely
tutorial
satisfying piece of like a storytelling and world setting.
Never
we got
put
to use our
me
physics
in a
tools and the
tutorial.
choreo tools and all of those things blended together into this very
that I
simple,
can tell is a tutorial
clean moment.
Like the Can Cup is perfect also because while it's teaching you how to manipulate objects,
unless it's like a sandbox game, then maybe.
Combine themselves in the
an open world sort of thing.
Yeah, so like it was a twofer, right? We got those two at the
where
same
you
time.
can't guarantee anyone's going to have the same experience. But if you can guarantee that everyone's going to start in the same place,
as a player, like you understood that.
Do this,
and you come to appreciate it, because we couldn't wait until you got to Ravenholm before you found out how awesome physics is. If you'd had any kind of weapon, I think they would have had to kill you. And we found the longer we sort of held that away from ourselves, the more we were forced to come up with stuff that was still entertaining that you could do. Like the raid is a whole, you know, in the tenements is a whole thing that could work because the player could only run.
So great.
We don't very often force the player into a very specific set of actions. That's one of the few times that we had to learn to really corral the player, and I think it ended up being pretty successful. Like I think the consequences for
it makes
sort of not
the world
following
feel
on
alive
the clear
while
path
also
were
making you have
quick
something
and efficient.
interesting to do when you can't do anything other than move.
Get in here, quick! Keep moving, head for the roof!
So when you build a world, I start with the infrastructure. What's really interesting for me is what is not visible to the tourist, which is the courtyard, the backyard, the shafts and the smokestacks and the wires. And every city has this whole existence And people are usually blind to it, and we tend to look at storefronts, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it came down to art direction. I mean, Victor was very, very familiar with all that, the look and feel. There was certain patterns and certain, iconic shapes that anybody who lived there could pick up on. They're like, oh yeah, my grandmother had that dress, or whatever. And my parents are from Argentina, and so they have that kind of sensibility, but a lot of it came down to the reference gathering, which was from Bulgaria, from Paris.
We have these buildings that again have back courtyards. They have big staircases. They have attic spaces, cellar spaces.
It really makes it so
and
dour.
The apartments have big windows and thick walls. So this was providing already a lot of context for people who can hide in these apartments.
Like environmental storytelling to the point where just the whole world feels against you, but it still feels
They'll be looking for you now.
livable. It's not like
that
Fallout
we
Wasteland.
wanted to have the player see
but it's
proof
not
that
a place
the
you
Combine
want to
were
see.
evil people, not that they were
You want it to
gray
be better.
Anyway, that
You want it to be
they
happier.
were objectively the bad guys.
You want to save it.
And then we had
they
it to
can
where you go
grow.
upstairs, and then we really carefully and intentionally framed the reveal of the world to where you see the Citadel front and center, and it's clearly in an alert state.
The four of us, the City 17 cabal, we've done City 17, which is a bunch of hard problems. We've done
Always environmental
Ravenholm, which is a different set of
storytelling.
hard problems.
Fiction
We were
must be better than
I don't know,
nonfiction
4 months trying to lock
visually
down the
and
game or something. I mean, it was really
plot-wise.
late. I may have the dates wrong, but it was really late. And there was a bunch of gameplay that was in there that hadn't really received a lot of like development.
We were coming from working with pretty much every tool in the game in C17 to going back to basically you have a pistol and metric ops. Not much really. So John Guthrie and I absolutely love exploding barrels. So we just used them absolutely everywhere we could. We set them up. We loved
I did
ragdoll
feel like they were
magnets and
alive.
physics. It's
But I
just
like
one of
it.
my favorite tools. It's basically you have a point in space that when a character
With
dies,
physics.
they turn into a ragdoll. And then you have a ragdoll magnet.
Explosive
that
barrels
says,
are so
okay, if
common,
there's
but with
if there is
physics involved,
any
that's so
ragdoll in this
great.
radius, pull towards me, and then you can
I'm
give
glad
it
they
a
used it as much as
strength.
they did, even if it
And so
wasn't
somebody
realistic at
dies
all to
in
have
an
so
especially
many
dramatic
just
location,
sitting
you can
around.
have an especially dramatic death. And we just use that absolutely everywhere. I mean, you can use it to just pull someone directly down. So in that bridge, the train bridge, I put magnets directly beneath their feet, so it looks like they just, like the planks beneath their feet broke and they
That's
just
right.
fell directly down. I mean, they died from a broken plank, which doesn't make any sense, but they looked pretty cool. It was so orchestrated, I guess, because we didn't want it to, we didn't really have a lot of time to have a lot of bugs
Yeah, I mean,
come out
it's
of
fine to have it orchestrated. As long as it feels satisfying to play, that's what matters.
Our team was the one that
And it's
did
not
the
so
Citadel.
railroaded
You know
that
how I
it
said that there was
feels
multiple
fake.
passes
It
on the
needs to
product over the
feel
course
real,
of the thing.
even
Well,
if it is
Citadel
fake.
had almost no pass, and we were thinking about Street War, and we were like, well, we just had this incredibly intense,
how you
Strider
make a
fight.
good game.
How are
You
we
have
gonna
to make it
outdo that,
fun.
especially when we only got a month to do this thing? We then came up with the idea of well, what if we made this just be your god, and this is the reward? You've won the game. Enjoy. We're gonna break all the rules and let you be god for a little bit.
Picking up, the enemies as ragdolls and throwing them around really came out of that development tool, because you could pick them up and move them around, and people are like, I don't know, that's pretty fun. Why can't we do that in the game?
It was either a week or a day. It was incredibly quick. I had every single mechanic of the Citadel mocked up. The Combine ball was actually a very, very heavy watermelon that would bounce around and eventually break up. I had spikes in the wall that you could skewer them on. We had electric fields that you can throw them in. We had the zero-G fields
Spikes
that
in the wall. Is that a
they
thing
would get
that's still
stuck
in the game?
And we had ripping off the machines off the walls. All that stuff all came together within an incredibly short period of time, just a couple days. Very shortly after that, people were like, we were having a real hard time with the AR2s, all
Feels
fire.
natural.
So
Just
maybe
comes
we'll
natural.
just steal this because it's kind of cool, and we'll bring it earlier in the game. Game development never does this. It never just materializes out of nothing in that short a time and is just something that everybody's excited and happy about. And it just it felt really good to be a part of that.
That's how you know you have something good, whenever it just feels natural. What more is there? Oh, Okay.
I started working on trying to find another source of funding to keep Valve going. I started working on a deal with a big publisher that was for Counter-Strike 2. So we're right there, ready to sign. We're really kind of running on fumes at that point, and then get a phone call and they're like, yeah, we changed our mind, we're not doing the deal. You know, I remember one conversation with Gabe, which is like, he was like, so how fucked are we? And I was like, well, we're kind of screwed. We could probably reformat everything that we're doing, but it means we'd lay off people. And we still had the huge uncertainty of what is going to happen in the lawsuit. Immediately started chasing another publisher, and were able to get a deal done with another publisher for Counter-Strike 2. When we got the deal done, Gabe at that point was super into knives, and as the deal gift for the parties, he built a knife that was inscribed Counter-Strike 2. And so the deal structure was, after we ship Half-Life 2, if you decide that you don't want to keep moving forward, then you can just decide to terminate the deal and we'll pay the money back. That ended up happening. So maybe a good choice, because it took us a long time to ship Counter-Strike 2. So that we got done in probably May of 2003. And then through some more depositions, Vivendi figured out that we had gotten this new infusion of capital and kind of lost their mind trying to figure out how did that happen, because it was clearly part of their strategy was, you know, running us out of money.
But what we decided was, hey, let's focus on the real nub of this and the thing that's going to lead to a resolution. Getting the judge to decide that we were right about the cyber cafe business, and also to decide that we were right that if you were distributing these properties without a license, that's copyright infringement. You know, we had asked for information about what they were doing in Asia, including Korea, and they, I think, to try to make our lives more difficult, produced a big chunk of documents in Korean, that were in Korean. I mean, everything from email to contracts to you name it.
And one of the things they were doing is just dumping huge amounts of discovery on it to force us to go and just have somebody go and look through it. It's like, oh, look, they ordered sandwiches again, right? It has nothing to do with the lawsuit. It's just an attempt to overwhelm us with tens of millions of pages of documents on the assumption that there's nothing in it that will be particularly problematic for their case. That will eventually just we'll either spend a bunch of money, which plays into their hands, or we'll just eventually give up because it's finding a needle in the haystack. And then we found the needle in the haystack, and that changed things quite dramatically.
Yeah. It just so happened that there was an intern, summer associate, who was a native Korean speaker. And I said, Andrew, hey, can you look at this pile here and can you just tell me what's in there?
I would guess that particular intern probably went through a couple thousand documents that day, and only one was consequential.
And they said, well, there's these other emails between these vice presidents where one says something like, hey, we destroyed those Valve documents like you asked. And I said, stupid. Are you sure it says that? And I said, yeah, that's what it says. And so, of course, that led to a conversation between me and the lawyer for the other side about, hey, it looks like your guys are destroying evidence. What's up with that? They wrote back and said, you're out of your mind. Whoever translated doesn't know what they're talking about. And I talked to Andrew again. I said, well, it looks like we're going to have a kind of a fight about this. Are you, we're going to need an affidavit from you about your translation. Can you tell me a little bit about your Korean skills? He goes, well, I'm a native speaker. At UCLA, I majored in Korean language studies. And I said, that's good. That sounds like we're in good shape.
The assistant general manager in Korea sending the letter to the general manager of Korea saying, I have destroyed those documents related to the Valve case as directed, which I think is one of Carl's happiest moments as a lawyer in his entire career. Just like stuff like this never, ever happens.
I did a lot of lawsuits for a long time. I never saw anything like that. Never. Maybe there was document destruction that couldn't be proved, but that was like, we're talking about it in writing. I'd never I'd never seen that before.
At that point,
It's stuff like
Judge
this that
Zille
just like,
said
this is what
all matters of fact
none of
are
this would have
now,
happened if
according
anything went
to
differently.
Valve, you don't get to contest any of those. Now we're just discussing how much you're going to have to pay and what the damages are.
And Gabe was still pretty mad. He was mad. He really didn't want to settle. He was mad enough that he wanted to keep going. But I remember sitting down with Carl and having a conversation with Carl, and I was like, so Carl, what do you think? Should we settle at this point? Is the right number? And he was like, well, there's this old saying, there's a difference between being a pig and a hog. It's great.
Carl was done with the deposition, and that was the only.
I will say, I know Valve isn't a perfect company. No company is a perfect company, but like the things that they've done for the industry, for innovating, for creative integrity, for realistic versus fun, just making things fun first, pushing the boundaries, and just always being top of the class. I mean, they're not going to be perfect, but there's certainly nothing like them. And I don't know. I just got to be happy that everything went the way it did. Because in life, you just got to be happy for what we've got. Because there's no point in acting like it could have been any better. Because guess what? It isn't. And thinking about it that way isn't going to make it any better. So we just have to be happy with what we have. And I am happy to be able to have stories like this and companies that are willing to make a controller that has so many different types of inputs and is only $100 and, try to shatter the console industry and keep, good seller practices and promoting games on Steam and things like that. And just like actually promoting games, the 30% that they take and paying their employees well. Just so many things that like, it's kind of like how Spirit Airlines, I heard that a lot of airline prices went up after Spirit Airlines went out of business, which really sucks. But like you need people to keep the challenge going, or else a lot of very greedy people are going to work together to make it awful for everyone. Like if you have 5 companies and they're all the ones, orchestrating the entire market of something, they could just get together in secret and be like, yeah, let's just all raise the prices by like 200%. And then we'll all make 200% extra money. And it's not going to work if we don't all do it. So let's all do it. And it's just like, okay, yeah, nobody can compete with us. I mean, we own like the entire market. So let's just do it. And things like Valve or Spirit Airlines, and just they all keep it first class because they want to do it right. There's such a big difference between caring about people and then caring about just profiting, and then that's it. And that's really what we got to get back to. We got to get back to, a world where the people come first, because these companies that just try to bleed us dry don't understand that there's nothing without us. If you keep bleeding us, there will be a time where you die. But if you do it right, you could last. Not forever, of course, everything ends. But you could last a lot longer if you just do it right. You could last your entire life and multiple people's entire lives if you just do it for the love of the game and for the love of the people, because you want people to have good lives. And that's it. So,
question I asked him to ask that particular witness was, is Half-Life 2 being replicated and shipped to retailers? He said yes. And the relief was, hey, no matter what, at least the game's going to get out to people, which is kind of that's a pretty unusual way to find out from your publisher that they're shipping your game to retail.
Yeah, it certainly was.
I kind of been thinking about this for the last few days, and what if there was one thing that I can point to that made us successful over that development period, and I think that it was really this culture that Gabe created, where we were hiring people that were senior enough to be managers, but also passionate enough to still be individual contributors. They were willing to
you've got to get people that are smart but also
big features,
humble,
and sometimes spend years working on those features.
Yeah, and it was like round everything else out just so you can be cool.
Hours a day.
Whether you're a CEO or a developer, you have to do it.
I would say
for the love of the game.
A good 18 months at least, but a lot of good memories though. I mean, everyone in that room has such great sense of humor. Like we knew each other's sense of humor. We trusted each other, we respected each other enough that like we could rib each other without like stepping on each other's toes and stuff, and it just worked pretty well.
It was just bigger, more pressure, but and I think that seriousness, in some ways, there's still humor, but that seriousness kind of infuses into the game. You feel it's a heavier game.
It's the most cohesive product feeling I can think of at scale that we've done as a company. The whole company was just aligned and got it done.
I think back on this experience, and it was a really hard time, but I feel super grateful because we were supported to make the very best game that we possibly could, and given the time to do it, we're going to ship it when it's done, even when we made unreasonable promises about when that might be in advance. And it was also at a time before the game industry was quite as specialized as it is now, where people got to wear multiple hats and contribute in all these different ways. So it was a rare life experience, and I'm really
probably live on
grateful
other
to be
sides of the
part
country, or even in different countries. At this point in time, with how much time has gone by and how much money they've probably made off of this, there's no reason to stay together. I see episodes. Ooh! Oh, episode 3.
Yeah, man. Part of the fallout of Half-Life 2 shipping was the realization that we can't do 6-year-long bet the whole company bets over and over again, and if we get it wrong one time, we're a big crater in the ground, as Gabe would say. And so we started to think about episodic releases.
The first idea when they pitched it to us, like, we're going to do this episode of content, we'll do one every how much? 12 months?
Yeah, we were going to have like
One a
alternating
year.
teams
Yeah.
coming out every year and a half, something like that.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, this is neat. But then, yeah, it just got out of hand.
So when they decided to start playing with episodic content, the promise for me that I felt was we can build smaller pieces, denser pieces faster, and we know what we're doing. We're going to be really good at this.
So a lot of it was like, do more with less, like keep a bunch of the existing stuff and retweak it to make some new interesting scenario. Like probably the biggest real new thing for episode 1 as far as technology was just having Alex with you throughout the entire thing and having her behave in a way that was believable and fun. She's with you for a few distinct parts in Half-Life 2, but they're always pretty heavily scripted and not really in combat. Having her there and able to actually be a useful companion, so there's a lot of little tricks that we did to try to make that as fun as possible for players.
Thought that was
She doesn't have
super
supernatural knowledge.
important
She's
for
not, like,
character
just finding
development.
things without you lighting them up. But
It's like if
you
she is
throw a
supposed
flare
to be
out
like
and
a
look
technical
at them with
love
a flashlight,
interest,
it's like,
you
okay, she's
have
gonna
to
go for that
spend some
target because she
time
can
with
see it.
her.
We were like cranking on that, and it took forever.
And even though it was
Like, we
just
were not
all in
just
combat by the
partying,
end, I
hanging
mean,
out.
I think it worked enough
that
for it
was
to at least
that
be
whole
believable
project.
for the
Yeah,
characters.
we were crunch mode, and then
Because
same
tough
thing
times
with
like that,
episode 2.
brings people
we started
together.
at the same time as episode 1, and so we ran for an extra year that way, which allowed us to stretch and push more.
So the hunters were initially something that we wanted to have a more sort of frenetic pursuit built into the design of the character. So it was really focused on, at the time, creating a creature that could follow the player into more types of spaces.
One of the questions was, how do we keep Alex out of your way during this really intense high action scene?
Yeah, how do we
where
take the person
player
that
has
stayed with
agency
you
to
the
make
entirety of
whatever
episode
decision they
1,
want about
like
where they
take
want to
them
be
out for
inside the
half
house
of
and that sort
episode
of thing.
2
That's
or
when we got
whatever.
the idea to have her sort of camp out by a window, and she would fire out the window and let you know if she saw any hunters or soldiers out that window. And if the player started to spend time at that window, she would find another one to go be at.
I mean, so Daria.
Yeah, I do
Sally
like
was,
that AI scripting.
Trying
They
to
did
create
manage
this
to add
final
her
fight
in a good way.
In episode 2.
Or that'd be
Strider's always reminded me
overbearing
of
if
assets
just Orden Alex
Strikes Back.
for all
Of
the
course, we
episodes
wanted
the whole
something
time.
fresh because just rocketing a ton of Striders wasn't going to be a bit repetitive after a while. So that's when we started collaborating, talking about the Magnuson device and the hunters and how would
that's
those
a good
all
way to
come
do it.
together
That's such a good way to
make
do
this sort of an overwhelming.
I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh, that's a cool feature. Yeah, okay. No, the Magnuson device is to make it so you can fight Striders in a more interesting way. Okay.
The citizens
I like that a lot.
And the hunters,
same enemy,
and to a lesser
but a
extent,
different
the
combat
Strider,
style.
are all secretly in cahoots to create this tension, because
hold on, what do you say?
Hunters, the citizens, and the hunters, and to a lesser extent the Strider, are all secretly in cahoots to create this tension. Because
it was pretty tense. That was very tense, and I like that a lot.
Got the Magnuson device on the last guy. Are you going to be able to shoot it? Oh my God, the rocket's going to be destroyed, and then boom, you hit it. So that when everyone comes out running, you really feel heroic.
You have the car and you have a big space and you're not
that
guided
and Nova
anyway.
Prospect
You have to go
are
and
the
take
two
care of
best
this
parts
threat
of the
in
entire
a way
experience.
that you think is best.
I don't know if that was on purpose,
I
but
think
just
it pays off. It makes the player feel like, I did this
huge
myself.
set
I wasn't
pieces.
guided by level designer at all, because we give them so many options. Right? We have you can kill the hunters with driving the car into them. You can pick up a log and throw at them. You can pick up a Magnuson device and throw it too soon, and they'll shoot it down. You have to learn. Oh yeah, I have to kill the hunters first. You can use rockets to kill the hunters. You have options, and you have time and you have space. But we dial the tension and the pacing up.
I didn't think the hunters were that threatening. But they did definitely make that part specifically a lot harder.
It is pretty cool. All the kind of cinematic destruction stuff that
I really
happens in
like
there.
that too.
It was
the
so
sawmill
hideously
being destroyed.
faked
That was
because basically you would send a Strider who would do that sort of the low scuffling
visually
run, and he would just sit there and wait, just staring at this building until the player could see the Strider plus the building.
Framed up
he would literally sit there forever. But we dial the tension and the pacing up pretty
really want to
slowly
know
over
if they made
time.
the same sort
the
of
playtests we like the most is when the Striders
environment,
he's getting ready to shoot,
storytelling
the
sort of
rocket,
thing
and then
today.
the
I
last
wonder how
Magnuson device goes
dynamic
off
it would
and
be,
then he's done.
because that was probably a lot harder back then than it would be today. So if they did the same thing, I wonder how
Nice one, Freeman. We did it.
every time it would happen, it would be different.
People were
Or it'd be
failing
a
left
bunch
and
of
right,
different
and
buildings or something.
The team,
like that.
the team was calling for the map to be cut.
Wow, yeah, I took a lot of heat for that.
And
both of us did.
Yeah, we had to see it through.
We were going to do an arc.
That was
of 3,
so good.
of course, because that's just how you think of stories in those terms. And then you want the high point to come at the end of the second one. And Gabe at one point saying, "Who's the important character you're going to kill?" I'm like, "Lamar is going down. This is going to be it. I want the end. I want episode 2 to end with Lamar floating into space and everyone cries." And Gabe's like, "That's not good enough."
The episodes were, a lot of that was an experiment on what's the right amount of
licensing
Oh,
Counter-Strike.
No. Lol. May or may not have my keyboard binds the same button as my something else. Lol. These are my real facial expressions. So I was gonna say that, but no. This is really me. Hold up, it's gotta be. It's gotta be around here somewhere.
The episodes were.
There we
A lot of
go.
that was an experiment on what's the right amount of episode. Episode 2 was longer than episode 1 and bigger, and people liked that better. But
it also took longer.
It took longer to make, and people didn't like it as much as they liked Half-Life or Half-Life 2 kind of scope, right?
Yeah.
So by saying episode, are we solving a lot of problems here, or are we just making a sideways trade-off? I think that's maybe the way I felt about it.
Even into episode 3, I still don't know what that would have been if we'd built it, because it hadn't been built. That was the feeling of excitement of something I can't even imagine is going to happen as a team. I was not imposing a top-down, this is what we must do to tell our very important tale. It's more oh, we have new features? How do we what kind of story can we do with these now?
Well, I worked on episode 3, and
Would've been
I was
very
working
neat.
on this gun called the ice gun that basically let you create amorphous shapes out of ice. So you could like raise a little ice wall in front of yourself. It would be attached to the floor, and then the combine
I think
soldiers
that could've worked
shoot
really
holes
well.
in it, and it would shatter and break like kind of like glass, I guess.
I know what
that
I
was
said
the
about,
primary
like, you
mode of
know,
you could build
being
ledges
happy with what
for
we
yourself
have,
to get
but
down.
I would have at least
You know,
liked
cliff
to
faces.
see
It had another
what a
mode that was
finished
like a
episode
kind of
3
like
would
a
have looked
Silver
like, 'cause
Surfer
that would
mode
have
where
been so cool.
you would extrude the ice in front of
It's
yourself
okay
and
because
then run along it.
it'll probably be
and use it to cross
the
gaps,
weaponizer.
go over chasms and things like that.
Hold up.
And use
the
it.
weaponizer. Oh, okay. I've barely heard about this. I only heard about this because of other sources. But that's a weapon called the weaponizer. Oh, and it has like radiation ammo, like Half-Life 1, I think. Oh, that would have been so neat to bring all that stuff back. I have no idea what it does, by the way. I just know that it's called that. But anyway, yeah. The whole reason I'm even doing this, as you guys probably know, is because I think Half-Life 3 is on the horizon at some point, and I would love to see if it would retread this ground. But at the same time, I feel like it wouldn't if they're going to talk about this so much. It really just depends. If it is going to come out, I think it's going to be great, especially with how long they've had to make it, how long they've had to think about the story, and they're very self-reflective, if you couldn't tell, because of this whole documentary here. Very self-reflective, very like, you know, we could have done this better, could have done that better, instead of like, oh man, this is so great, this is so fantastic, I'm so glad that we did this way, and we're so cool because we're Valve. No, they are, you know, they do think a lot of stuff is cool, but only whenever it actually deserves it. There's a lot of stuff in here that's like, it wasn't really the best decision. Or this is unfortunate, or stuff like that. So anyway, to finish up my point, man, I would have loved to see it, but then if we had episode 3, we wouldn't be. I know nothing's confirmed, but there's no room for Half-Life 3 if we would have gotten episode 3. So what would we have rather had? Would we have rather had Half-Life 2 episode 3, you know, a short story, some interesting gimmicks, same engine, blah, 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 20 years ago? Would we rather have had the build up and then hopefully, I am very hopeful, to be fair, but hopefully a full game in a full engine, full new engine, at least for the Half-Life series, in a first-person environment, just blows our socks off. I feel like it's going to be great. If it's anything less than 20 years worth of wait, I don't even know. But yeah, let's finish this up.
To cross gaps, go over chasms and things like that. What else do we have?
I would have really
liked
liked that specifically because
it was around
it's
centered
so
around
cool.
Borealis.
I remember the little blobby, squishy.
Oh yeah. Brian was
guys,
working on the blobs. So we had the iso surfaces that.
And for those who don't know, these blobs here, they mention that these blobs were essentially, they might even say it here, but they were used in Portal 2 for the liquid, for the gels, propulsion, repulsion, and obscurity gel. So this effort didn't go completely to waste, but like this is like a living blob here. So that wasn't fully realized, but I had also heard, probably going to say, because this is about Half-Life 3 or Half-Life 2 episode 3, but like it just couldn't run on consoles. I've heard couldn't run that well on consoles, so that's another reason it was scrapped, which like totally understand. If it can't run and if it was going to be bad, do not ship it. So it's probably a good thing that they had at least waited a little bit. I didn't need to wait this long, but you know, at least waiting until it was going to be good. Because, oh yeah, duh. So it literally says we end Portal for the paint. But I just wanted to say, I just want to get that across. Do not ship something bad ever. So many games do it nowadays. Day 1 patch, day 2 patch, week 3 patch, game-breaking bugs, just a bad game in general. I don't care. Just don't. It's an art form. It's not just a mode of profit. So don't. And also, trust is so important. You can't just take advantage of the people. You have to do it right.
We ended up using in Portal
Yeah,
for the paint.
I
so
feel
we
silly.
had that as an enemy. It was a blob enemy, and it could change its shape.
That would have been
and you
so
could
neat,
choreograph its shapes with some content tools. And then it could also split into little hoppy blobs that could, they were almost like little head crabby things, but they were, they were little splats that would hop around.
I wonder where that would have been,
we were
though,
doing
because
all
this is
kinds of stuff
Ravenholm.
with that. It could pass through grates.
You could get more gameplay out of
Where
something
would-
where you had
would that be in
maybe a
episode
couple
3?
of creatures with simpler behaviors.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
then you would spend time combining them with other game mechanics.
Nice.
Story was never the boss of anything. It was always we worked on a peer-to-peer thing. We were all gonna, what can we do? What do you think would be cool?
It was still a collection of playable levels in no particular order, and a collection of story beats
that's
and
beautiful.
story concepts. And we were still probably another 6 months we would have had a critical mass of mechanics, and then start putting them in a timeline. I think probably a year and a half easily, depending on how ambitious we got. Could have been, 2.5 more years. Yeah.
Probably it's hard to be a lot less than 2 years.
Yeah, I think we were 6 months in on it when we moved to Left 4 Dead. I don't know, we were moving at a pretty brisk pace too.
That's another thing. That's another thing. I just want to say that quick before we move on. Everything you do in this sort of space affects everything else. So Left 4 Dead and Portal may have never had the room to breathe if they didn't let go. So it's just you can't have everything. And so you just have to be thankful for what you do have. We got Half-Life 2, Episode 1 and 2. We got Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead 2, Portal 1, Portal 2, Desk Job, Alex. I mean, everything. There's also Dota, Deadlock, all that stuff. I don't know. There's even more that I'm missing probably. But, oh yeah, Counter-Strike as well. But, you can't act like everything you ever wanted can just exist. From other people, that is. Not everything is going to go optimally. I mean, that's just the nature of art. And that's why art is special. And it should be treated with this, reverence, but also appreciation for what does get made. For example, an artist makes a portrait, half of a portrait, and then dies. Sure, it's unfortunate that he died. There's some universe reality where he finished it. But at the same time, it exists. You can take your own inspiration from it, and it still exists. The same thing with Half-Life 2, Episode 2. I mean, it stands and lives on its own, even incomplete in a 3-episode structure. Everything stands and lives on its own, complete or not. It's your job to do something about it if you think there's more potential there. You use it as inspiration. You make your own thing. You make what you want to see in the world. There's no reason not to. And don't let people tell you you can't. So, I mean, really, this sort of culture we've gotten to where people are always just like, oh man, just work for 40 years and then die. Don't make anything creative, even though you have a bunch of ideas on a bunch of things you want to see. No, do it. Why wouldn't you do it? We live in the age of tutorials. Just do it. Do anything you want. When it comes to creativeness, make everything. And if you don't have the motivation to do it, then do as much as you can.
We needed to go much bigger on episode 3 or do something else, because I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but element fatigue. I think we had really explored a lot of what made sense in the Half-Life universe and setting.
Arcane was building the Ravenholm game, and even they were having trouble doing cool new stuff with this tool set. And like, if those guys can't figure out a bunch of cool stuff to do with this, I think we're running out of fuel.
Episode 3 is coming along. It's like, well, it's the new big thing here. It's got to be bigger than all the stuff we just did. You know, even episode 2, and it's like, oh my God, you know, it just becomes.
Are we allowed to cry in this documentary? That's what I want to know.
Left 4 Dead needed kind of an all-hands-on sort of an effort to ship, and so we put down EP3 to go help Left 4 Dead, and it was a really tight shipping schedule, and it required a lot of work from everybody to get out the door, and it was worth it. I mean, it was.
Yeah, Left 4 Dead came out.
Left 4 Dead came out great, but it took long enough. And this is the tragic and almost comical thing about it, was it took long enough that then by the time we considered going back to episode 3, the argument was made like, well, we missed it. It's too late now, you know, and we really need to make a new engine and, you know, to continue the Half-Life series.
I do think
and all
that's
that.
kind of true.
And now that just seems in hindsight so wrong.
Yeah.
You know, we could.
Now, I know he says that. I know he said that you don't need a new engine, but of everything that they've said, where you have to make it bigger, et cetera, just if it doesn't feel right, you don't have to do it. Don't make a Half-Life 3 or a Half-Life 2 Episode 3 just because everybody wants you to. You make it because it feels right. Because if you make it bad, just because you feel like you should, then it's going to be bad. It's always going to be bad. I mean, I haven't watched it, but I always hear a lot about the Game of Thrones ending. I don't know anything about it, so no spoilers here. But like, bad ending. Universally acclaimed bad ending. The whole rest of the show is good or whatever, but like, man, don't make an ending if it's going to be bad. I'm sorry. That might be a hot take, but just, I would rather live on a cliffhanger if you cannot come up with an ending that's good enough. Because Half-Life 2 with a cliffhanger is one of the most acclaimed games of all time. If they would have really just pulled out a bad ending, you realize how bad that would have been? This documentary probably wouldn't have even happened if it wasn't so critically acclaimed because they made a bad ending because they felt like they should have. So that's exactly, it all feeds into it together. Just be happy for what we have. If it doesn't feel right to make something, don't make it. If it feels right, do it. But if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't come out right, if it doesn't come out at all, it's okay. Okay, there's always more, and you can do things on your own. You can use the inspiration that you get from that to make your own thing if you want to badly enough. And that's the last thing I'll say, because I know we literally have a few minutes left here in the documentary, but like, man, that's what I want my whole platform to be about. I know I don't have much of a gallery right here to hear what I'm saying, but I don't care. You gotta do what you love. You gotta let other people do what they love. And if they don't love it, they don't do it. It's okay. So just be happy for what we have and make anything you want to make.
Could have definitely gone back and spent 2 years to make episode 3.
And you can't get lazy and say, oh, we're moving the story forward. That's popping out of your obligation.
Dave's got it right here. I've seen this.
Of course, they love the story. They love many, many aspects of it. But sort of saying that your reason to do it is because people want to know what happens next. You know, we could have shipped it. Like, it wouldn't have been that hard. You know, the failure was, my personal failure was being stumped. Like, I couldn't figure out why doing episode 3 was pushing anything forward.
But yeah, I mean, some of those people made Left 4 Dead 2 and then Portal 2. So
yeah, we did other things instead.
It's not like that choice would have been free.
Exactly.
In terms of the players, like, they may have gotten that and
given up something
else. Yeah. So it's hard to say.
But a lot of us have been doing Half-Life for 8+ years.
We saw a bunch of really compelling reasons to go explore more multiplayer-based projects too, because not only just what customers were doing, but internally, you know, we found ourselves wanting to play a lot of multiplayers.
It sounds silly to say it because we're a relatively big company that has a bunch of stuff, but we're not that many people. There's 300 something people here, and so we're working on a bunch of different projects, and it's like, you know, people are passionate about Portal, people are passionate about TF, people are passionate about Left 4 Dead and Half-Life and, CS and Dota, Deadlock. I mean, there's a lot of things there. And I also work on our hardware, so I've worked on Steam Deck and the original Steam controller and a tiny bit on VR. Unfortunately, for any decision we make, somebody is going to be unhappy, but hopefully we're making a bunch of people happy with the choices we do make.
And
if it weren't for the episodes, there'd be no such thing as Dota. And I know that sounds really weird, but it was the things that we learned in developing the episodes that led to, Team Fortress, to more rapid updates.
I think everybody that worked on Half-Life misses the working on that thing, but it's also hard not to be like, man, I've seen every way that you can fight an antlion or, whatever. And so you want to get some space away from it until you can come back to it with fresh eyes.
It was easy to think about VR being a vehicle for Half-Life because that was a big technological innovation and kind of a core reason for that product's existence. And I think one of the things we have internally tended to attach to the Half-Life IP is innovation. Gameplay innovation is oftentimes enabled by a technological innovation. Clearly there was a ton in Half-Life 1 and 2. And so it's an interesting challenge moving forward to think about what that means for future Half-Life stuff, for sure.
The ending of Half-Life Alyx is somewhat a self-critical realization, so that was super satisfying, and all credit to the people who are specifically involved in that decision and those sets of designs. I think that Half-Life represents a tool we have and promises made to customers to capitalize on innovation and opportunities to build game experiences that haven't been involved previously. And I think that there are no shortage of those opportunities facing us as an industry right now.
No, fiddlesticks. What now?
Well, that's it. That's the whole thing. There is the Half-Life 1 documentary to watch, but I wanted to watch the Half-Life 2 one because I felt he says about Half-Life Alyx. I really want to know what the ending of that is. That's what we would have been doing tonight. Yeah, if I get, I really want to beat Half-Life Alyx. I will say though, for anyone interested, it'll be out next week, so no streams until at least June. At most, if you count the days right or whatever. But yeah, Half-Life Alyx, the ending I've heard. I don't know what that means. I really want to know. I would have gotten closer to that tonight if that's also, before I get too ahead of myself, Gabe was implying a twist because, there's so many opportunities for, Gabe. Oh, really? Even after you've announced and released Half-Life or Half-Life 3 is simply just, if Half-Life Alyx only came released in 2020 and a game released in 2026, I gotta be honest, they're gonna look mostly the same. And can't find amazing ways to improve on that. So I'd imagine that it wouldn't be like Half-Life Alyx, especially because Alyx is a prequel to 2. And so it would be the first time that we would see the setting of Half-Life Alyx, spoilers, the setting of Half-Life Alyx doesn't like of Half-Life 3. So it would have to take place somewhere else at very least. Half-Life 3 would have to be in a completely different setting of some kind, which would make it difficult. Droid. The Citadel is gone, and that puts a lot of pressure on them to make some. But yeah, I mean, just and do it when it feels right. Not when you feel ready. You can always come back to it later. And we'll leave it on that. See who is available to raid. Let's take a look here. I think there might be a few people, as long as they're all still streaming since I started. Who am I following that's streaming? That's the real question. Who should read Makabite when I've been streaming? Martian Mallow is also streaming, which I rate a lot too, because they always stream on Thursdays. But anyway, not available for streaming. We will be streaming Half-Life Alyx until we are done. I know. I'm not expecting it, but I'm just saying with that. Because this is 20 years in the making, you can't tell me that we shouldn't be doing that. So, good night, everyone. See you guys. What would that be? Let me check the date. If I about 11 days, just so you know.